The college football playoff field is set. Hello, everybody. Ray Crawford here with our managing editor, Pete Fiutak, our college football analyst, Doug Chapman. Let's go ahead and look at the top 6 teams revealed in the final college football playoff rankings. Number 1, again, it's Alabama, who got in for the first time at number 1 on the 18th of November. Oregon in all but one of the rankings, that being the first one back in late October. They're number 2. Number 3. See, Florida State, they're the only team to be in the top 4 throughout all of the rankings this season, and jumping up to number 4, making the playoff, Ohio State, as they leapfrog TCU, and then Baylor also left there at number 5, and certainly the Horned Frogs, a team that was 3 at the start of play yesterday, and that's the big talk, them dropping all the way to 6, and of course Ohio State getting into the top 4 there, the Final Four for the first ever playoff. So that leads us to really what's been a continuing our discussion here on the set here at Campus Insiders after the playoff was revealed. I think everybody started to formulate their opinions. Doug, I'll start with you. Did the committee get it right? They did, and they told the Big 12, hey guys, you better go out and get yourself a conference championship game, because you see what Ohio State did with that loss to Virginia Tech, but the way they went out and not just beat Wisconsin, not just blew Wisconsin out, literally manhandled Wisconsin for 4 straight quarters on both sides of the ball. They were able to jump TCU, get into the top 4, and bump TCU down to 6, which was shocking to me. I thought TCU would still be there, but Big 12, get a conference championship game, because apparently conference championship games mean a lot to the committee. I don't think it has anything to do with the conference championship game. I think this is the committee saying, Baylor, don't schedule an FCS team, SMU, and Buffalo. Play a real team. Had they had a real win over anybody else in non-conference play, they could have made the argument then that Ohio State, your loss to Virginia Tech, the worst by far, you're out of this thing. Baylor, you can make that case. Beating TCU, you're in this thing. I think that's what's going to end up mattering here. At the end of the day, though, they got it right. Yes, what we've learned is the rankings up until the last ones don't matter. It's just a snapshot. Win your conference championship, and then we'll figure it all out. It's what we said at the start. The other thing to take from this, holy cow, look at these matchups. Forgetting the Big 12 side of this thing for a second, you're telling me that we have the SEC champion Alabama playing against Urban Meyer and Ohio State in one, and we're going to have 2 Heisman Trophy winners, Marcus Mariota in Oregon versus the defending undefeated national championship in Florida State. That is a fun day. That's a heck of a day. Some good ones. TCU's been here before on the outside looking in, as you recall, in 2010, undefeated. They expand the field to 4, and they still can't get in. Plenty to come from Dallas today. Here's Bonnie Bernstein down there. She has a preview for us.
Hey there, Ray. I am standing in the precise position where Chairman Jeff Long will be in just a few minutes to give insight as to how, probably more interested than anything, is Ohio State is the number 4 bumping Texas Christian. There will be 2 press conferences today. Jeff will come in and talk about the first 4 playoff selections, and then later on, shortly after 3 o'clock Eastern, he will talk about the entire New Year's 6 bowl platform as it's unveiled. You will exclusively find the playoff press conference right here on Campus Insiders, so stick with us. We'll be back with you in a few minutes.
All right, Bonnie, great stuff. Look forward to that coming up in just a few moments. Okay, guys, so let's set it up here. First, you've got, in what is likely going to be the Sugar Bowl, Alabama gets the opportunity to choose, and for proximity purposes and for some success too, they're going to go to New Orleans. And Nick Saban 3-2 in the postseason in the Superdome. Of course, this is a team led by Amari Cooper, Blake Sims, TJ Yeldon. They won the 2004, did Nick Saban, national title with LSU, and the 2012 title with Alabama. They're going to take on Ohio State on their 3rd quarterback, as we all know. Cardale Jones did exactly, Doug, what you wanted him to do last week. He had to have a big game, had some help, some great plays. 59-0 was that final score over Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, rather. So that sets up this Sugar Bowl matchup here as we look at these 2 teams. And what intrigues you, Few, about this matchup? You like the coaching return here of Urban Meyer and an SEC kind of old. I mean, seriously, what more do you want? I mean, it would be nice to have seen, just for tradition's sake, Ohio State versus Oregon in the Rose Bowl, but come on. I mean, for all those haters out there about Ohio State who said you can't beat the SEC, here
here you go. You got your shot at the #1 team in the country in a playoff. Urban Meyer, with all that 4- and 5-star talent, gets a month to prepare for Alabama and all its 4- and 5-star talent. This is heavyweight against heavyweight, coaching battle against coaching battle. It's about as big as it gets. I'm jealous that he's going, even though I get to go in.
Did you see Urban Meyer's face at the end of the game?
Yeah.
How excited he was, how elated he was at the way his team played. They went out and played like a championship team, and they finally now, on both sides of the ball, have SEC caliber athletes that can handle you on the field in the front. They have the guys on the back end. They've got the skill position guys that can run by you. But Alabama, their Achilles heel was always teams like Ohio State. Now what they've done this year is they've morphed themselves into a team now that can go hurry up. Watching that Missouri game, that first series, they were at the line of scrimmage in about 25 seconds. They couldn't even take a TV timeout. They had to go screen and screen because they weren't huddling. So Alabama's able now to play that style. We know they can lean on you, put those big bodies, play that old school smash mouth style. But I'm telling you, I didn't think this would be the 1-4 matchup, but I cannot wait to get down to see these two styles play against each other. And two of not just the best coaches now, but two of probably the best college coaches in the last 25 years of college football.
And the assistants, too. Think about what happened in Championship Saturday. One of the big stories was Lane Kiffin, what he came up with against Missouri, and what Luke Fickell came up with to stop Melvin Gordon in the Wisconsin offense. There's so much intrigue. This is, again, a battle of true heavyweights. This is a national championship caliber thing. This is what the playoffs thing was probably hoping for. Again, after this all settles down, everyone's going to be about TCU and Baylor and how the Big 12 kind of missed out on all this. But as it rolls on over the next month, everyone's going to start to hype this thing up and go, oh my gosh, Alabama versus Ohio State. This is really what we want to see. And this is where the Big 10, for as maligned as this conference has been, now gets its chance. Beat Alabama, and everything that happened in September doesn't matter anymore.
And think about it, Pete. If we'd have said week 1 that there'd be a team in the college football playoff playing with a third-string quarterback, people would have probably stopped watching us. They'd have said these guys on this network are absolutely insane. They're on a third-team quarterback. This guy hadn't played all year.
First, so he's not a walk-on.
I'm just saying.
The dude was a 4-star recruit. He's probably the second-best team in the.
But he wasn't good up to start, and they're in the college football playoff with the third-team
Jones
quarterback.
All right, you're all right, Cardell.
And he got a lot of help. I mean, his
he looked great. He looked great last night.
Fantastic plays.
And Ezekiel Elliott, 200 yards, man. Wow.
Yeah, well, let's see what he can do against Alabama. Keep this thing going. All right, that leaves the Rose Bowl, which we presume will be, of course, Oregon. And they will head down the coast to Pasadena, where they will take on the defending national champion in Florida State. You got Marcus Mariota, who is likely going to win the Heisman Trophy. He's thrown a touchdown pass in all 39 of his starts there in Eugene, while Florida State, and of course the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, in Jameis Winston, and the Seminoles have won 29 straight games. 29 in a row dating back to December of 2012. So as you look at these two teams kind of head-to-head here, the tail of the tape, both just one loss here for Oregon. Florida State, as we mentioned, going undefeated, challenged yesterday by Georgia Tech. Oregon in redemption in the win in the Pac-12 title game against Arizona. Both teams very deserving of being in that Final Four, and we're going to see these two great quarterbacks go head-to-head. That seems to be the headline.
Yeah, the moment this matchup was announced, Florida State got down 14-3, and Jameis threw 2 picks. So basically, they're going to have to. They can't come out slow like they've done in every game this year. But here's the weird thing about it. Maybe this Florida State team is one of those teams that's like, all right, we went through this last year. Let's just get through this regular season. Now we're here. This is what we've been playing for. Maybe we see a whole different Florida State team. We kind of did on offense last night against Georgia Tech. Defense had problems hitting that knuckleball of Georgia Tech. But dealing with the Oregon offense, that's going to be tough. But Jameis Winston, that was the Jameis Winston of last night. He was terrific. The team's going to get time to heal up a little bit. I'm hoping and I'm thinking that now we see Florida State rise up and become Florida State again.
Yeah, Jameis Winston last night, the downfield ball was working. And we look at Cook running the ball there in the end zone. The way they've been able to establish a running game has been the difference for Florida State to me down the stretch. I don't care who played Georgia Tech yesterday. That offense is tough to prepare for. No offense to Georgia Tech, but I'm throwing away that ACC championship game if I'm watching that tape. You see how many guys were limping off the field for Florida State? It's a very hard offense to prepare for. They're going to get 295, 300 yards rushing against anybody they play because they're so dedicated to the run. But the way Winston came out, no interceptions, 300 yards again, 10 yards per pass attempt, seeing the way he was in command out there, even when the game is close, even when he's taking a few shots, even when guys are jawing at him, he's the most mentally tough player in college football, and I cannot wait to see him against that Oregon team. And I can't wait to see what scheme they come up with defensively to try to slow down Marcus Mariota.
There are a few teams out there with a long layoff are going to have problems because they're going to kind of lose their edge, lose their timing. That's not really the case with these two. This isn't the tippy-tappy gimmick Oregon team of past. This team can power the ball a little bit. And what the real key here is going to be everyone gets healthy. The offensive line, even going at Arizona, was still a little banged up. I think with a little bit of time, and you got both sides are going to be 100% healthy or as close to it as possible, I think you're going to see two fantastic teams come out and a terrific matchup between these two. Again, Oregon can bring the power, they can bring the speed. They're going to do a little bit what Georgia Tech did. This is going to be a fascinating game from a game playing standpoint.
And remember, Oregon played against Arizona the other night minus Ronis Gracie, their starting center. They had a backup center in there, so when they get him healthy, he will be healthy. Was on the sideline on a crutch. He'll be back in the football game when they go out to Pasadena. Oregon didn't play their best game against Arizona and still blew them off the field. So imagine once they get a month to prepare and they watch enough film and they're fully prepared for Florida State and they're fired up. Pete and I were texting during that game. Both of those teams were playing really, really nervous. You could tell Oregon was playing a little tight. They wanted just to get through that game.
Get the ball in your hands. You got both hands around the neck.
So they got through it. So now they can say, you know what, we're in this thing now. We got 2 more games left. It's a 2-game playoff. And watch a more relaxed Oregon team. Both of these games are going to be fantastic. They're going to be fantastic football games.
There's actually no reason to play this game. We told you back in February that it was going to be Alabama versus Oregon for the national championship. We're just going through the motions at this point, just to have fun with it.
We are standing by for Committee Chair Jeff Long, Arkansas Athletic Director, to speak to the media. He's expected to step to the podium, as Bonnie Bernstein said, at any moment. But while we await him and his comments, I'm told now he is stepping into the room. So a lot of questions about TCU and Baylor.
He's down there in Texas. Good luck with this, man.
he could be there for quite a while. Once again, Jeff Long stepping on the stage and set to answer the media, which could be some interesting firestorm questions. Here's Jeff Long, the committee chair for the College Football Playoff.
Attention, I'd like to welcome Executive Director of the College Football Playoff, Bill Hancock. Bill?
Good morning, everybody. Well, 2.5 years ago when the playoff was created, this was the day we were looking forward to most, and then the game to follow. I want to congratulate the committee on a series of terrific meetings and on the homework that they've done, on their overall preparation. Things went just smoothly for them. I also want to tell you a little bit about what will happen the rest of today. When we finish the media obligations, Jeff will return to the committee room. They will discuss, finish the top 25, and then they will begin to discuss the bowl pairings, which we will be prepared to announce at the scheduled time of 1:45. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome and introduce another person I'm very proud of, the first chair of the selection committee for the College Football Playoff, Jeff Long. Jeff?
Thank you, Bill. All right. I guess it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleased to be with you. Excited to share with you the great news about the College Football Playoff and our rankings this morning. Thank you for joining us for our final ranking of 2014. The committee met until late last night and began again early this morning. We now have the full body of work for all the teams, and here are the results, 1 through 6. The top-ranked team is Alabama. The second-ranked team is Oregon, followed by the third-ranked team, Florida State, and then the fourth-ranked team is Ohio State. Number 5 is Baylor, and then the sixth-ranked team is TCU. Alabama will play Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl on January 1, and Oregon will play Florida State in the Rose Bowl on January 1. The winners will meet in the first-ever college football playoff national championship on Monday evening, January 12th at AT&T Stadium. Alabama was voted the top-ranked team by the committee due to their impressive record, conference championship, and a strong strength of schedule. Oregon was voted second for similar reasons. They are 12-1, they are conference champions, and they too had a strong, tough conference or strength of schedule. Florida State ended the season undefeated, and in addition, They had 7 wins against teams with winning records. They also have their conference championship as well, and the committee voted them third. The discussion about the fourth team was long and spirited. We ended last night at about 1 a.m. We reconvened at 7:30 a.m. this morning. As always, we began with that clean sheet of paper, and our members came with an open mind, and the decision came down to 3 teams, really. 1, 2, and 3 were clear-cut, but we looked at Ohio State, Baylor, and TCU. The committee thoroughly analyzed the strengths of these 3 teams. Ohio State was voted the 4th-ranked team because they are 12-1, and they won their conference championship with a dominating victory over division champion Wisconsin. Their record against teams with winning records is 7-0. Importantly, committee members placed emphasis on the fact that Ohio State's non-conference schedule was stronger than Baylor's. You will also note that Ohio State has steadily moved up all season long in our rankings. In our rankings, they went from 16 to 14 to 8 to 6 to 6 to 4. Okay. Baylor won against a highly ranked Kansas State team. With all games played and their body of work complete, committee members believe that Baylor and TCU were roughly equal, with identical 11-1 records and a similar body of work. That meant Baylor's head-to-head win against TCU was the tiebreaker in this case. The committee voted Baylor was the 5th-ranked team and TCU the 6th-ranked team. The difference, again, was razor thin. The fact that they were co-champions in the Big 12 had no bearing on the decision. Committee members voted decisively that Ohio State is the 4th-ranked team in the nation. Last week, I said at this news conference that the race for 3 and 4 spots was highly competitive and that several teams were in playoff contention. That indeed was the case. Alabama, Oregon, Florida State, and Ohio State. These teams will now meet on the field to determine who will play in the College Football National Championship, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. As we finish, I want to thank the committee members. They are smart, dedicated people who put in hours of long work and were dedicated to the process. They love this game and they're passionate about this game. I want to thank the staff for their efforts and appreciate the hospitality shown here at the Gaylord Texan. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. If you could please raise your hand. We do have mics out in the audience. We'll go to the far left.
Bryce Cherry, Waco Trib. Mr. Long, when you mentioned that the committee took into account non-conference schedule when they were looking at Ohio State versus Baylor, was any credence given to the fact that Baylor played one less non-conference game than Ohio State?
Certainly, that was part of the discussion that they played 9 conference games. Certainly entered into the discussion. It was considered.
We'll go here on the far right.
Dallas Morning News. I guess what I'm struggling a little bit is TCU being 3rd last week, wins by 52 points, and then drops to 6th. And then the head-to-head is mentioned now. The head-to-head was always there, so why was it not taken into consideration earlier than it did?
Well, the head-to-head, great question. The 52 points really did not have a bearing. They won the game. It was an impressive win. But the head-to-head really did not come into play for the committee until the body of works were complete. And at that point, the committee felt those teams were indiscernible. They were the same. And when we got to that point, and we've said it kind of all along, that head-to-head would come into play, and it did. So when those teams had a complete body of work and they were, comparable, equal, the head-to-head took precedence.
We'll go to the middle on the right.
Stuart Mandel from Fox Sports. Jeff, you talked a lot on ESPN about how impressive Ohio State was in the championship game. It also had
Well, we think it's the body of work, and indeed it's now as well. We've seen an Ohio State team impressively overcome 2 quarterback injuries. They've had to replace their quarterback twice, and then they went out and dominated a conference rival in Wisconsin in the championship game. And we feel that spoke volumes about the strength of the team. Football's a team game, and the coaches in the room remind us of that. And you know what? It spoke volume as to Ohio State's strength as a team.
We'll go back to the middle, back right.
Chuck Carlton, Dallas Morning News. Jeff, if I heard you correctly on ESPN, you said that playing that championship game gave Ohio State a 13th game against a quality opponent. When you're comparing that against teams that only played 12 games, like the 2 Big 12 teams, how much of an edge is that?
Well, again, it was an impressive win. It was the 13th game against a highly ranked opponent in Wisconsin. And, you know, it had an effect. It was an additional game that we could see Ohio State prove their strength. And so it was significant. I can't say that it wasn't.
We'll go to the second row on the right.
Dan Wesley, Yahoo Sports. When you say that Ohio State gets credit or it's more impressive because they're dealing with a second and a third string quarterback, what do you say to the teams that are adversely affected by not being able to get that benefit because their quarterback was not hurt? We don't know how good TCU's third string quarterback is because
It's not a question of how good their 13th quarterback is. It's a question of how strong the team is. And Ohio State demonstrated they're a strong team, even with their third-string quarterback playing in the game.
Other teams did not have the ability to show that because their players remained healthy.
No, they had the ability to show it with their first team or their second-team quarterback. And when you evaluate them, Ohio State's stronger, even though they were playing their third-string quarterback.
So there was no benefit to playing a third because you sounded to me that you were extra impressed that they had to replace 2 quarterbacks.
We were impressed with the strength of the Ohio State team that they could overcome the injuries to 2 quarterbacks and play and dominate a championship game in the Big Ten and win.
Well, if you don't have an injury, how do you show that?
Again, I've answered your question. It's not about the third-string quarterback. It's about the strength of Ohio State, their team, offensive, defensively, kicking, and they did it with a third-string quarterback. So that's my answer.
We'll go to the middle on the left.
Jeff, I'm Gil Lumberton with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. How would you answer the people who are going to conclude that the committee, by its vote, seemed to think that the Big Ten conference was better than the Big 12?
Never did that enter the discussion in the committee room. We did not discuss strength of conferences. We've not done that since we began to meet. We look at teams, evaluate those teams, and who they played and how they performed in those games. So to be very honest, there's no discussion about strength of conference. That's not a metric. That's not a discussion point. Again, we look at those teams and who they played and how they performed in those games.
Andy Staples, Sports Illustrated. Jeff, when the Big 12 didn't present a champion, how did it work in your minds? Did each of you decide who you thought was the Big 12 champion, or did you just go as there is none? Or was there disagreement about who the champion of that league was?
Well, again, we did not. We had co-champions presented to us as a committee, so we evaluated them as co-champions. And again, that's what we were presented with. We weren't given an either or. We were given co-champions, and that entered into the discussions. And again, I can't answer how it affected individual committee members, but it was discussed and it was a factor.
Was there a Big 12 champion? Did either of those teams get that resume line?
They were co-champions.
How was that weighed?
They were weighed as co-champions.
We'll go to the middle front row on the left.
John Solomon, CBSSports.com. Just to follow up a little bit on that, I'm just trying to get a better understanding. Did the Big 12 co-champions get the same value as, say, the ACC champion, the SEC champion for winning that conference championship?
Well, again, we were presented with co-champions. So there were 2 teams sharing that championship. In the other situation, we had definitive champions for that conference. So that did enter into our discussions, and it was deliberated, and it was left to individual committee members to make a decision upon.
A different question. What do you think now that's all been played out in the weekly rankings, and do you think they will continue, and should they continue?
Again, I think that the committee will look at this year, look at this season, look how the entire process went. We will discuss it as a committee, and then we will discuss it with the management committee, and we'll probably make some recommendations. But again, it's up to the management committee how the process will change, if it will change, and if those weekly rankings will change. So again, we're fresh, we're still finishing, we still have work to do finishing off this top 25. Sometime after this, we'll get together, discuss this whole process, and again, decide if we have recommendations to make to the management committee.
We'll go to the far right.
Jeff, just to be clear on what this last weekend meant, had the Big Ten not played a championship game, like the Big 12 did not play one, and Ohio State season had ended before its demolition of Wisconsin, would they still have made that Final Four?
Yeah, that's a hypothetical that I really can't answer. If we were presented with that, then the committee would discuss that, debate it, deliberate, and arrive at a decision. But we didn't have that factor, so therefore we didn't consider it.
We'll go to the second row in the middle.
Heather Dinich with ESPN. To phrase that a different way, I'll try it like this. Will the Big 12 be better off in the future with a conference title?
I can't answer what's best for the Big 12 conference. That's not for us to decide, and I can't answer that. That's for the Big 12 to decide what they think is in their best interest, just like the other 9 conferences have decided what's in their best interest.
We've got time for 2 more questions. We'll go to the very far on the left.
Yeah, Chuck Culpepper from the Washington Post. I was just wondering if you could address the narrowness between 4 and 6 and how TCU's slip, as you said earlier, is more about Ohio State's rise.
Yeah, with TCU last week being 3, we tried, and we did say that those were very narrow, and I know a lot of times we've expressed the narrowness of this, and it has been, and it's hard to put just exactly how close they were. But I said in an earlier interview that it was 3 A, B, C, D. So they were that close. So while the public may look at it and say they fell from 3 to 6, the committee doesn't see that fall being very far. It was that close, and when these other results were added in, it resulted in TCU being ranked 6th through our votes.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Long, Louis Scruggs, NBC Dallas. As I'm listening to you, I'm still just trying to make sure I get it clarified. 13 games, in the committee's opinion, is valued more than 12 games.
A 13th game against a highly ranked opponent, a quality opponent, certainly adds to a team's resume and certainly is taken into effect and considered by the committee when they looked at the overall body of work of a team.
We'll take our final question on the far right in the middle.
George Schroeder, USA Today. Yeah, Jeff, I'm wondering, you talked about this a little bit on TV, and I don't think you talked about it here, but multiple revotes or multiple, I don't know what term you use, of when you're talking about the top 3 and the top 6. Can you get a little bit more into the process about how long that took, what times of the night you're talking about, and how much you redid things? Yeah, it's a great question, and it's hard to put in that time because when you're in that committee room and the hours are going by, I don't think about. But we discuss a lot. We discuss teams' rankings. We may look at 4, 5, and 6, or 2, 3, and 4. We may discuss them. At some point in the end of that discussion, someone may call for a revote, and a committee member, if they have support from 2 other members, can call for a revote, and we can revote positions 2, 3, and 4 based on those discussions. And sometimes we have a great deal of discussion, get to the point where we think we're going to revote, and then we don't. I think the discussion leads people to believe, okay, that ranking is where we believe it should be. So how many of those did you make?
I would say multiple. It's hard to put a number on it, George. Multiple. Throughout the top 25.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. We'll bring back Bill for a quick comment.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Jeff. couple of things. First of all, just to clarify, and you all know this, I believe, but it's an NCAA policy that 10-team conferences cannot have a conference championship game. So that needs to fit in this mix somewhere. I would also say thank you for coming. We're glad we could pull Jeff out of the meeting to come and visit with you now, and he and I will be back about 2:10 this afternoon to talk about the rest of the top 25 and also the bowl pairings. Thanks, everybody.
All right, that was Bill Hancock. Previously, you heard from Jeff Long, and well, you got to give him credit. He's standing up there taking a lot of questions right there in the Texas bowl.
Well, first of all, Bill Hancock's wrong. You can have a 10-team conference with a championship. You can petition the NCAA, and it's almost a rock-solid lock that the NCAA would say, okay, you can have your conference championship. So you can have a conference championship if you're the Big 12, if you really want one.
All right, thanks for clarifying that for everybody, and I'll get your guys' thoughts on what you heard, your final thoughts of what we've seen here over the past 45 minutes to an hour.
Hey, first, Jeff Long has some splaining to do. He's down in the state of Texas down there. The two teams out of Texas, Baylor and TCU, don't get in. They basically negate each other. You should have heard some of the questions. People were they wanted some answers, and basically what it comes down to is they got to get a conference championship game. And what Ohio State did last night, people can hate on it and say that they lost to Virginia Tech, but they went out and had a commanding performance in their conference championship game against the second best team now from their conference, and they didn't just beat them, they handled them. So Big 12's got to figure this thing out, or they're going to be on the outside looking in maybe again next year.
I still don't think it matters. If Baylor beats TCU again, I think Ohio State's still in this thing. They need a better non-conference schedule. The real key here is we've got to start to think differently. We're all used to the poll system where TCU's 3 or a team is here and doesn't really move much. This is actually how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to adapt and adjust as we go along, and that's the big criticism of the old poll and bowl days where you just didn't have movement. You just didn't have teams go up and down based on anything else other than if you were there, you were pigeonholed in that spot. Now, okay, it stinks for TCU, but they took the whole body of work in. They examined the fact that Ohio State did blow away a good Wisconsin team, and they came up with their 4. It's just a different way of looking at things now.
But I'm still confused. Even though we're in a new era, I'm still confused, okay? The top 4 are set, but how does TCU fall behind Baylor? How do you go from 3 to 6? Okay, their common
Baylor
opponent.
beat Kansas State and therefore won the conference championship.
TCU destroyed Kansas State. Baylor beat Kansas State. Baylor, yes, beat TCU in the head-to-head by 3. They didn't blow TCU off the field. Then they turned around and lost to West Virginia.
Because
who
that doesn't
TCU
matter. That
beat.
doesn't matter.
How do you fall below that
because
team?
That doesn't matter. They're looking at conference champions. And what they're doing
they're co-champions,
they're not co-champions because, again, according to the tiebreaker, Baylor is the actual one
because they won the head-to-head.
They won the head-to-head. So what they did is your top 5 teams are the top 5 Power 5 conference champions. So for TCU, it kind of stinks. But, again, they saw the body of work at the end of the day and then put it all together in one big thing. What we've now learned, the other thing about this, though, is we need more transparency.
Because I'm confused.
It's not fair for TCU to be 3 last week and think that it might be set and not know what it's got to go into and know that it's playing, pretty much with nothing to play for in the last week.
And I'm confused. TCU's sitting at 3. They go out and handle their business. They give up a field goal to Iowa State, and they fall completely out of the top 4. That's what confuses me.
Are the top 5 Power 5 conference champions. That's that simple.
This is just the beginning of a lot of questions that people across the college football landscape are trying to answer. We're going to get some more answers as to the other affiliated bowls of the college football playoff. As Bill Hancock mentioned, he's going to be back in a couple of hours with Jeff Long to announce the rest of the rankings and where those teams will be allotted in terms of their bowls. That's going to come up at 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 Central. You can see it live here on Campus Insiders. Shea Pepler will be here. Pete Fiutak will be back, as well as Doug Chapman. And also reaction on the website all day and all night long from Insiders from coast to coast. We will see you back here, though, live at 3 Eastern, 2 Central.